Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote these now famous words, sitting in a jail cell in Alabama, scribing wisdom to the outer world from the cold concrete block. These words of King's have long been a comfort to me, ironically wrapping me up in some sort of warm blanket of hope. Hope in the integrity of the social justice movement. Hope in my liberal UU faith community. The repetition of these words within our UU faith commends to me that my fellow UUs will, along with me, keep fighting against injustice in order to prevent it from taking hold, in order to create true justice so that it might exist everywhere. I believe that we as UUs, that we people who repeat words like these from King are committed to living our lives in ways that honor the inherent worthiness and dignity of every being, with all of our incredible, diverse expressions of beauty. I believe that our most holy prayer as UUs is the true desire for all to thrive. And yet, King's words are not warm and fuzzy words, because they indicate that justice is not yet here. We have not yet arrived. We are still on the journey through the desert. We are still traveling the long and winding road to true freedom. King's letter continues. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. King describes waiting for more than 340 years for the granting of his constitutional and God-given rights for himself and those who look like him, who have black skin like he does. He is tired in this letter. He is weary. And he is ready to advance the cause of justice rather than be pinned down to the map of his time by unjust laws. He has been working so hard, and yet he is still writing from jail, pleading with the rest of the world. He continues, there comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over and we are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair. I hope you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience. He's tired of waiting. He's speaking to the voices of the white moderates who say, well, it will continue to happen in time. You have already gotten this. He continues, you express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern. At first glance, it may seem rather paradoxical for us to consciously break laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One has not only a legal, but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. It is important that King looks to others, like the saints and others throughout history, for inspiration, and names that his plight is not unique in the human experience. King existed as we exist at a point in the trajectory of the human pursuit of justice. We look to him as a bright and shining example, as a shooting star across the fabric of humanity, who helped propel the human rights movement forward. However, King was not alone. It behooves us to remember this. He did not work alone. He did not live to see the culmination of his movement's success either. And we won't live to see the success of this movement either. None of us will. The world will not be perfect when we die, but that is not a reason to fail to do our part. For we all are a part of the fabric of humanity, just like he was, and together we weave the tapestry across communities, across time, across identities and cultures, and I know what I want and what I believe that we as UUs and as members of the community of UUs in this beautiful Virginia Blue Ridge want to weave into the tapestry of the world. I want my part, our part of the weaving to contribute to peace, to liberation, to justice, and to beauty. King wrote his letter from Birmingham jail on April 16th, 1963. This was just over 62 years ago, a literal lifetime ago for some. 71 years prior to that, another lifetime, on June 7th, 1892, Homer Plessy purchased a first-class ticket from the East Louisiana Railroad train in New Orleans on the corner of New Orleans Press and Royal Streets. Plessy boarded the train, took a seat, and informed the conductor he would not be leaving the whites-only rail car. He was swiftly removed from the train and arrested, which was his intention all along, and also the intention of the person arresting him. This morning, May 18th, marks the anniversary of the 1896 United States Supreme Court ruling in the Plessy versus Ferguson case, and it wasn't great. It advanced Jim Crow laws during that time. It established the separate but equal legal doctrine allowing state-sponsored racial segregation, which was a significant setback for civil rights that persisted for decades to follow. Homer Plessy and those with him were trying to make it better. It actually got worse. He lived until March 1st, 1925. Unfortunately, this means that Plessy did not live to see the Brown versus Board of Education ruling in 1954, which was the significant turnaround, overturning the immoral doctrine of state-sponsored racial segregation and returning humanity towards the advancement of justice, at least legally. But that's okay, because there is no one bright and shining spot on the map of justice that names the moment of our collective victory. It was not in 1892 on the train with Homer Plessy. It was not in 1954 on the day of the Brown versus Board of Education ruling. King's 1963 letter from a jail cell in Birmingham did not crack the code of justice, nor has the work of civil rights activists and other justice seekers up to this day worked to succeed in undeniably and irreversibly healing the racial wounds of our country or our world. We're not there yet. The incredible thing about the Plessy story, which is reminiscent of the King story, and all stories really, is that it was the strategic work of many people to advance the cause of justice. And that gives me hope. Plessy was born to a French-speaking Louisiana Creole family during the Reconstruction era. That means he was born free. He went to an integrated school, actually, and he lived during a time when Black men like him could vote and marry interracially. Plessy became a political activist later in life after his civil rights were eroded following the withdrawal of the U.S. federal troops from the former Confederate States of America in 1877. I sure hope we don't have to become activists with the experience like he had of watching his rights slip away, but it sort of feels like that right now, yes? In 1892, the civil rights group, I'm going to butcher the French, Comité des Citoyens, actually recruited him, and he wasn't the first one to try this, actually. They recruited him to participate in a public act of civil disobedience. Plessy's presence on the whites-only first-class rail car was planned, not by him alone, but also by the very man who arrested him and many others. The person who arrested him was a private detective hired by the group. Their collective intention was to legally challenge Louisiana's Separate Car Act, which segregated rail cars. They actually ensured what he was going to be charged for in so doing. I wonder how many of us here believes that we would personally have the bravery to act as Plessy did, or the strategy to plan as his group did. Or how many people here would have the gumption and determination to famously say no, as Rosa Parks did in 1955, when she refused to give up her bus seat in defiance of Jim Crow laws? Many look to Rosa Parks as the spark that lit the civil rights movement, actually. And while her fierce determination and bravery is to be revered, if Rosa Parks were here today, I think she would tell us herself that the movement for civil human rights did not begin with her and the Montgomery bus boycotts. It didn't even begin with Harriet Tubman's efforts to emancipate enslaved Africans, although she certainly played her part. There is no moment in history when our efforts for freedom and justice began that we know of, and there's no inevitable and foreseeable end either. It's a spectrum, it's an arc across time that we know no beginning or end of. That's not the point. So a little more from King's letter from Birmingham jail. Of course, there is nothing new about this kind of civil disobedience. It was evidenced sublimely in the refusal of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to obey the laws of Nebuchadnezzar on the ground that a higher moral law was at stake. It was practiced superbly by the early Christians who were willing to face hungry lions and the excruciating pain of chopping blocks rather than submit to certain unjust laws of the Roman Empire. To a degree, academic freedom is a reality today because Socrates practiced civil disobedience. In our own nation, the Boston Tea Party represented a massive act of civil disobedience. Goes a little heavier, taking a pause. We should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal. And everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. Sorry, that hits me a little. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Even so, I am sure that had I lived in Germany at the time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish siblings. If I had lived in a communist country where certain principles dear to the Christian faith are suppressed, I would openly advocate disobeying that country's anti-religious laws. I have no doubt that King would have done that. I'm not sure if I would have the bravery. I sure hope so. And we may all be finding out about our own integrity in this regard soon, if not now, if not already now. Friends, I don't need to tell you that we are living in a time such as this that King describes. So this is a little bit edgy in youth circles, but I'm reminded that Christians took up a slogan several years ago asking themselves, what would Jesus do? WWJD. While the WWJD bracelets may or may not be our thing as UUs, and we do have Christian UUs among us, but I haven't seen them so popular amongst us. I do ask of us, what would a historical spiritual leader and political activist like Jesus do in these times? What would MLK say or do during times such as this? And how can we use these past figures, whether they be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or Harriet Tubman, or Rosa Parks, or Homer Plessy, or another ancestor who led us to this moment? How can we use the inspiring moments and incredible activists of the past to lead us through this present moment and out to the other side? One hard thing about our ancestors who've gone before is that they're not with us physically, but what amazing thing is that they can always be with us spiritually in a different way. So I ask us, how can we remember them, and how can we also strive to be good ancestors ourselves in the making? How can we be good ancestors in the making right now? So I invite you to pause and consider those figures, spiritual, historical, familial, cultural, relational, people you've known or people who inspire you, who give you strength to defy injustice. Take a moment and think of those figures who are supportive to you. And if you're so moved, please speak the names of these beloveds into our space so that we might lift up their supportive presence and memories. If you're on Zoom and would like to simply unmute and speak a name aloud, we can do it at will. I'll pause for the naming of these social justice activists and love warriors. 𝐉𝐻𝐻𝐿 𝐒𝐻𝐿, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, Homer Plessy, Mhm. Mhm. Mm. We give thanks for those, the memories of those and the lives of those who were named. May we cherish what they inspire us in us. Cherish that piece of us that recognizes the morality that is driven to connect with that deeply rooted love and keep that spirit of love alive in our world. Friends, when we say no to injustice, we are saying yes to integrity. When we say no to state-sanctioned violence, we are saying yes to life. When we say yes to the laws of the heart, when we embrace the holiest yes, then we are catalyzed to say no to all imposters. There are laws that may be codified on paper, yet they sit there falsely, dishonorably, hollowly, prohibiting the very justice that they claim. This would be a whole other sermon, but there are also ethical and moral laws that I wish were being followed right now. Didn't know how to weave that one in. There will be moments in our lives when we each have to make a choice. It will be up to each one of us to follow our own internal moral code. May our compasses be tuned to the truth in the most loving sense of the word. May we be held and led by the spirits of our ancestors and sacred guides who can most help us to achieve liberation, peace, and freedom. And may we remember that we are not alone. No one ever has been. And we do not do this for us. We ride on the shoulders of our ancestors, and we do this for the people of the future who we will never meet, just like our ancestors did this work for us. We do this work for the people of the future who we will never meet, but who we are entrusted to love enough to deliver them a more holy and just world. That is a gift we can work on creating together for the future. May we continue to do the work of true justice, whatever it calls for. And in addition to carrying out justice, may we, as that holy book of Micah states, love mercy and walk humbly with our own gods or whatever you connect with along the way.